I am Penelope, author of epic fantasy and paranormal romance, and welcome to my imaginary friends, a look behind the scenes of an author mapping the worlds in my head and making them a reality. Hello friends, today is Friday, May 8th, 2020, and this is episode 67 of My Imaginary Friends. I'm Leslie. So this week's best thing is a thing that I was hoping would happen. Someone had floated this idea. I saw it talked about online a few weeks ago, and that is that Barack Obama is going to be the nation's commencement speaker. He's actually doing the most because he's doing 3 different commencement speeches I saw. One for HBCUs, one for, I guess, high school, and then one in general. I might have gotten that wrong, but I thought that was really cool. And when I first saw that idea, I was like, yes, please, that is what we need. It's going to be great. And I'm excited. Honorable mention goes to this YouTube channel that my husband discovered. It just popped up on his feed, and it is the best thing ever. It's called Prim's Hood Cinema. And so it's this guy who does these recaps and like little reviews of hood movies. Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, Set It Off, he doesn't have a ton. Like if you get into it, he's been doing it for about a year and maybe once or twice a month and then taking some months off. But they're hilarious. We've watched almost all of them, and I joined his Patreon because I got so much enjoyment out of it. I was just like, oh, okay, fine. I'll just add another Patreon. I don't even want to add up how much I'm spending on Patreon every month, but I think it's worth it. I like to support creators, and so if you need a laugh, they're hilarious, and I will leave a link to it. But if you just search Prim, Primm, Prim's Hood Cinema, really great stuff. In writing news, I have started plotting, and so for me, plotting is an essential part of writing in preparation for trying to do that 20K in 5 days, starting May 15th. So I still have not read the manuscript, so I'm working on the Portal Fantasy. And like I had mentioned last week, I do have something like 56,000 words written. I still have not read most of them. I've read part of the beginning, and then I stopped because my fear is that I'm going to get attached to them and that I won't want to change anything. And I know that things need to be changed. So I decided I will read what I have after I finish getting a decent outline together. So I went back through more of the materials that I had. I had been working on this for on and off for a couple of years to get to that point. And I found this wonderful document that I forgot that I had. It's based mostly on K.M. Weiland's books. So she has 3 books that I highly recommend. If I was going to recommend one craft book above them all, it's going to be tough because Save the Cat is really up there. But Creating Character Arcs by K.M. Weiland would be fighting for first place with Save the Cat. But if you're a craft book junkie like me and want to buy them all, I also recommend Structuring Your Novel by her, and then Outlining Your Novel. And you get the triumvirate. There's also workbooks that she sells. I think they're PDFs. I'm not sure. She sells them on her website too. And I've gotten some of the workbooks. And I actually think this worksheet that I created was copying and pasting from one of her workbooks. But I had filled out 38 pages of workbook for this Portal Fantasy. And so the workbook includes things on like character profiles for the main characters and the side characters, and then plot stuff. There's an outline in there. I think I combined different workbooks too, and maybe took some stuff out of the questions in the back of her chapters, because each of her chapters she has key questions, and I've compiled those into various worksheets also. It's my thing. That's kind of what I do. So I realized, I've done so much work on this. I really have. I've been steeped in this story for a long time, just in pockets between working on Earthsinger. But a lot of that I have to redo. Why do I have to redo it, you might ask? And it's not just because it's 2 or 3 or 4 years later and I'm a better writer. It's because with the time that's passed, I think that I'm interested in different aspects of the story. Like there's some aspects of the story that are always going to hold my interest. And like the basic premise. And so this is the story with the dragons. Like there's a reason why this story has been in my heart, why I wanted to tell it. and thinking through that, and then also thinking through where I am right now as a writer and what do I want to say now, And part of it was the character. I mentioned last week that the character's changed a number of times. Everything about her has changed. And that necessitates the story change. So when I was writing about, initially she was in her 20s, and she's going back to being in her 20s, but her personality has changed. I've learned more about character arcs and weaving them into the plot. And so since her personality, her character, her wound is slightly different, everything that emanates out of that puts you on a slightly different path. So yeah, that's why I'm looking at all the work that I've done, evaluating whether it still holds true, and then if it doesn't, changing it. And those changes just ripple. Same thing with the hero, the main, the love interest character. And I didn't have quite a good of a handle on him because the story, the POVs also changed. Like at first it was dual POV, which is my preference. And then I was trying to make it single POV, and that wasn't working. I think my agent was like, why don't you try dual POV again? And I was like, okay. And honestly, I much prefer to write dual POV, but that means he has to have his own arc and he has to have a lot more happening with him. And the premise and the base of the story is kind of her story. So I have to give him something to do. And as I was doing this work this week, I was realizing that it would be stronger if I made his wound in direct opposition to her actions. So basically this thing that she's doing is the worst thing that someone could do and be in a relationship with this guy, And it wasn't like that before. It was like they had a lot of relationship conflict and they were on different sides of this like chasm in the story. But I realized, I need to change his backstory so that it'll hit harder, so that their black moment, relationship-wise, is just the worst thing for him. And that's just going to deepen it. It's going to make it, I think, a more powerful story. So how have I been doing this other than my massive worksheets, which I'm going to just kind of redo. I've been looking through all of the documents that I have in my spreadsheet, these worksheets, and trying to figure out, should I edit them or should I just start from scratch? It's kind of the same as with the manuscript, actually. I do like starting fresh with everything, so I'm not beholden to, just because it's written there means I have to keep it. Once it's there, it feels like it's solid to me. And so by starting over, even if I copy and paste a lot from the old documents, I still just feel like I'm starting with a fresh slate. I did some more work on the Enneagrams for their characters, and the Enneagrams actually have not changed from the original characters, even though other aspects of them have, which I think is really interesting. And now I'm still a little bit overwhelmed by the actual things that happen. I've been working on the skeleton, the structure of it, and this has to happen and this has to happen. But this thing that has to happen, like a betrayal happens, or a reversal or whatever, a revelation, the on the ground mechanics of that, I still don't know. And that's where I think reading what I have written already will come into play, because at that point I'll be better able to say this has to stay or this has to go, and then I'll replace it with something else, as opposed to, I generally like my writing, so when I read it, I'm like, I want to keep this, and so if I'm looking at it with this new structure in mind, which isn't that different from the original structure, but it's subtly different enough that it's just like a whole different book. Another thing that I am doing based on that John Truby book is thinking about the symbols in advance. Usually, I think I just do a lot of things intuitively. So if there's symbols in the books, I didn't put them there consciously. They just came and they're there. But it is interesting thinking about it at least ahead of time, and also having, a partially done manuscript. So I can look at what I intuitively already put in as symbols and now try to make them, just do it with more conscious thought in advance and more planning. I've also started plotting with a Kanban board, which I haven't done before. So as I do all this work, I've been making notes of things that could be scenes on note cards. And so I've got my note cards, just a few right now. And then I was like, well, do I want to go all the way downstairs and lay them out? Because the only place I can really lay out all these note cards is the dining room table. And, my office is upstairs, and it's just a trek. It's just regular stairs, but I'm lazy. And I do my work here. Like, I'm in my office doing work. I don't want to have to traipse back and forth. So I was like, well, let me do it online. And Scrivener has the note cards, which is nice, but I want to lay them out in the acts. And that just makes sense to me. So I was like, oh, I can do it on a Kanban board. So I was like, should I do it in Notion? I ended up doing it in this program called ClickUp, which I use for my project management. And you could do it in Trello. Any sort of Kanban board program, and there's lots of them out there, will suffice for this. So I just made columns. So 5 columns, 1 for scenes I don't know where they go. Then there's Act 1, Act 2, Part 1, Act 2, Part 2, and Act 3. And I've just been transferring the cards into the Kanban board, and when I know where they go in place. And then I tag them with, oh, this is a turning point, this is a pinch point, this is the midpoint, this is, the inciting incident, whatever. And that's been going pretty well. I like that. And I like that I can just do it here on my computer. Having the tactile note cards is also nice for flipping through things and checking things off, but this is just a visual way that I can lay it out, sort of like a plot board, but not quite as messy. A caveat on the craft books, especially since I read so many of them, some of them, and the John Truby book is in this number, are written in such a way that they make it seem like this is the way. Like, if you're not doing it this way, your story is trash. And I do not like that. I like a lot of the ideas that are in the book, and I do like how they've made me think about the way that I plot and the way that I do characters and things like the symbols in a new way. And that's all great. But the sort of arrogance I feel wafting up from the page, I could do without, honestly. And there's a lot of things that I already have a system. I'm not going to blow up my entire system. And that's not the point of continuing to read additional craft books. It's not to blow up your entire system that I've written X number of books with before. And I can't even say that because the system's always changing. But it's to say, hey, think about this. Why don't you think about symbols in the beginning instead of just relying on your intuition and your subconscious to put them there? That's something I can think about. For instance, another example is theme. And he wants you to do your theme in the beginning. And that, I think that would lead, for me, that would lead to more preachiness. I think a theme is another thing that's intuitive, and that I realize at the end or in the middle or some other point. But I don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about what is the theme of this right now, because I think that it's going to come through. And especially for me, with high compliance, I do have to force myself to be like, okay, this just because he acts like this is the way. This is not the way, because I have a way, But for those of you who've taken Strength Finders, I'm an input learner, and I need to learn more things. And it is a double-edged sword, because I love learning about new plotting systems and craft methods, but I do have to be careful not to rush out and try everything right then, because that's kind of my instinct, and also not to throw away other things that really work. And then overwhelm, like I found this 38-page worksheet that I have to read through. And I was like, how much time did I spend on that to just do it over again? Which is frustrating. But it is my process. And I'm okay with that, like I actually do enjoy it. I was working on onestopforwriters.com doing their character profiles with these new versions of these characters, because that document had great stuff in it, but it was old stuff. And I really enjoy that too. And one thing I really like about One Stop for Writers is that they have all these like checklists. So you don't have to come up with everything on your own. Like once you have the thing, like if you have the character's wound or the lie that they believe, you fill in things, and then once you make a choice, it pops up like a list where you can check off, okay, what are the positive qualities of this character? What are the negative qualities of this character? And once you've chosen a few, you can go deeper into them. And why do they have this positive quality or negative quality? And what does it help them do? And so it is still a lot of coming up with stuff on your own, but I like that. I just like having those lists of qualities and emotions and wounds. All of the thesauruses that they have are super, super helpful for me. So I worked on the hero's character builder, and I'm going to do the heroines because I really wanted to focus on him since I'd given him short shrift, and I need, in order to fill out the rest of the plot and what happens, I think the gaps from what I've done so far are going to be his side, his POV, his character arc, and how he's impacting my heroine's journey. So plotting is fun. I do enjoy it. I love what I'm doing. I've been putting in like long hours. I've been taking big chunks of my days to do deep work on this, which works really well for me. So I've kind of been doing alternate days, like because I do have work to do. So I will take like 5 hours one day just to plot, and I did that twice this week. And then another day I'll take the bigger chunk of time to do my website development work. And then I'm still touching it every day. Like I'll do a shorter session, like 2 hours of plotting on the days when I have to focus more on work. So kind of alternating has been working in terms of scheduling based on my current workload. But I love sinking deep into, a big chunk of time, spreading my craft books and my notebooks around. I've got my worksheets on the computer. I've got things that I write on by hand. It's very chaotic, but somehow it works, and I love it. Other quick things. Maryland is still on lockdown. Masks are still mandatory. We're not one of those states that is opening up quite yet. Although I heard Ocean City open the beaches, maybe? I don't know. I didn't pay much attention to that, but so I'm still here. And I've been watching more TV. I watched Upload on Amazon Prime, which I highly recommend, with a caveat. So it is near future sci-fi, which I love. It takes place in 2033. And when you die, you can be uploaded into a virtual heaven. But it's still very capitalistic. And it's a love story about this. The first episode, I was like, I don't know if I can watch this because this guy is a jackass. But that was the point. I could see that he was going to have an arc. And it's really good. It's really good. A caveat is that it ends on a cliffhanger. And A, it has not been picked up for season 2 yet. B, when and if it does, when are they going to be able to shoot season 2? It's a big cliffhanger. And after I finished, I had to do some self-maintenance on myself. I was like, I need more. So I just stalked all the actors on Instagram, and that helped. Yeah, so I recommend it, but if you're the type who hates cliffhangers, then yeah, it's going to be tough. I also watched Sunset Boulevard for the first time. I love old movies, but I'd never seen that one. And I watched it specifically so that I could watch the lessons from the screenplay, which is a YouTube channel that does these really in-depth video essays on writing and craft, but screenplays, obviously. And they had, the most recent one was on comparing Sunset Boulevard to Parasite in terms of the disillusionment arc. And it's a great video. I recommend it. Sunset Boulevard is crazy. I knew that a lot of famous quotes and just things had come from it, but seeing them and seeing how completely over the top Gloria Swanson was, it was a lot. When people are like, I love Sunset Boulevard, I'm like, do you? My brother was like that. He was like, I love that movie. I told him I watched it. And I was like, you do? Because I can see how it's iconic and foundational, but do you actually enjoy watching it? Anyway, I don't know how I got out of film school without watching that movie, but whatever. We watch a lot of Black movies at Howard. I can say that. Oh, and publishing. I approved the proof for the Cupid Guild. The second story dropped this past Thursday. Another one coming up this coming Thursday. And that's been kind of fun. And so I don't know if I put it for sale or not. Actually, I approved the proof on Amazon, and I think it takes a couple of days for them to put it up for sale. So at some point it'll be there. I got the Ingram Spark proof also, and I just have to set aside some admin time to put those for sale. And I haven't done any marketing really. I'll post each week when they come out. I don't feel like marketing. I think maybe when they all come out, I'll maybe buy some ads or something. We'll see. I've heard from a couple of people who've been reading them, and I'm glad that they're in the world again. But I don't want to have to actually market them as usual. But that is it for me for this week. I'm taking part in a couple of online events over the rest of the month. There's a panel on May 16th with other people of color, fantasy, and paranormal authors. And I'll be doing virtual Balticon from the 22nd to the 25th. And then I'll be doing some Reddit stuff at the end of the month. And I'll try to get it all up on my calendar if you're interested in any of those things. So I hope that you have a wonderful week. And I hope that, however, if you're able to go places now, or if you're not, I hope that you stay safe and that you are staying sane with great things to do. And happy reading. For episode show notes and to sign up for the Footnotes newsletter, go to myimaginaryfriendsshow.com. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and watch the video episodes on YouTube. I'd love a rating or review to help support the show. And My Imaginary Friends is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. For more fantastic podcasts, go to frolic.media/podcasts.